Hello, and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed, and today we are in the Meno. So, last time we left off with Meno making the claim, why bother searching for that which we don't know already? Because even if we find it, how do we know that we found it? Because, we won't recognize it. How do we know what we're looking for? And of course, if you already know it, then that's another reason why not to look for something. So Socrates calls that heuristic. Heuristic, the use of language to what we might call win a debate, or to be contentious, or to ultimately shut down the logo, shut down the very thing that we're here to do as human beings. So we might be very familiar with this because this is what is taught in legal institutions. Law courts are not about the truth, it's about winning a debate. At school they teach you about how to win debates. In debate class, there's no dialectic class. Politics, the same game. So our society, you could say, is very stupid and screwed up because we use the logos this way, what Socrates is calling the heuristikon logon, the heuristic use of logos, which we might call the anti-logos, or even a reflection of the pathologos, because the pathologos, as we've been reading, functions to shut down the logos. Now, very familiar, very common, as true today as it was 2,500 years ago, which is something that we're seeing over and over again in the text. But that's where we're at. Let's see how Socrates addresses this idea, this heuristikon logon, the use of language to shut down. Hey, of course I already know everything, says most people, because, if I didn't know everything, now they're talking about their personal opinions and beliefs, even if they've gone to a school like, and had a teacher like Gorgias, as Meno has, and they might say, well, why learn anything new? And you might have friends who you introduce to philosophy and say, hey, by the way, there's this fantastic, awesome podcast called Awakening Philosophy with this super awesome dude named Jed, and you can actually develop your own understanding too, free yourself from your problems, and discover your highest goals and reach your destiny. It's awesome. You should learn this thing called the logos. And your friend might say, well, why bother? Why bother learning anything? Because you either already know it, so what's the point of searching for it? Or you don't know it, and then how will you find that which you don't know? How will you know what it is you're looking for? How will you know whether or not you've got it? So, a very stupid, or maybe clever, you might say sarcastically, clever way of shutting down philosophy, our purpose, mastering the art of the logos to reach our destiny, to know and show the self. Okay, so what does Socrates say to that? That's where we're on, and that's where we are up to in the text. That's what we're on now. So let's jump in. Here we go. Here we are. So what does Socrates have to say about this? I understand what you intend. Let's see Meno's comment. How will you search for this? What are we searching for? Self-virtue. Virtue itself, which is the whole of virtue. So the other aspects like justice and courage we have seen are the parts, which are real beings, or eidos, what your friend who studied this in school might call the forms. You'll say, hey, by the way, the word isn't forms, that's a stupid translation from a stupid history of misunderstanding Socrates and not reading the text yourself. The word is eidos, which is an aspect of the real beings, which means you, and the word eidos means to behold, meaning it's a spiritual thing. You are to behold it, experience it yourself in what's called nous. So I say that to your friend if he says, what do you mean, the Platonic forms? No, eidos. Now, if they are the parts of virtue and we're after the whole, we have a question. Does that mean that virtue is the whole of being? Or simply a greater whole within the realm of being? So we're carrying those questions with us. And by the way, Meno is very pissed that he has been led to see that he can't speak about something because he doesn't know what it is. And his reaction is to get angry at Socrates for making him stung, puzzled, unable to speak. Socrates says, well, you certainly are giving that appearance. I don't know whether I believe you because you still seem to think that the speeches you made about virtue were good. And you seem to be making a lot of speeches right now about how terrible it is to be stung. But nevertheless, if I will take that criticism, if I am stinging you, making you puzzled and numb, as a secondary effect from me being most numb myself. It's not from me being abundant, having the good things that we have been seeking in virtue, including knowledge, but from being autos aporon, aporia of self. So I have more self puzzlement, which he said is a part of self-virtue, by the way. Or he didn't say it's a part, he said it is self-virtue. So when talking about whether virtue is having the good thing, but hang on a second, if you're at a loss, aporia, but you have been using virtue to get to where you're going, then that's no less self-virtue than having the thing. In other words, if you get gold and silver because you think it's a good, by beating up an old lady and stealing her purse, that's not virtue. So being at a loss of gold and silver is just as virtuous in that situation. Now, of course, he is talking to Meno, who is stuck in the physical world because his education has been garbage. But for us, we can read it at a higher level. While he's talking about being at a loss of gold and silver to Meno, to us, we are interested in beings, in apprehending reality, in nous. And at the level above being, the self. So to us, he's talking at a higher level. Keep that in mind. So, not having knowledge can be virtue, which is interesting because he started this dialogue by saying, I don't know what virtue is, but let's go on a hunt for it. So, Socrates is stung, aporia, and goes on to say, and if I'm making you stung, then that's good. And as we've seen, being in aporia or stung can be virtue. And just as he did at the beginning, saying, hey, so right now we're on page 16, I am all the more stung. But nevertheless, let's highlight that, but nevertheless, let's consider and search along with you for what in the world it is in being. The exact same thing that he said at the beginning. What are we learning about Socrates? He's very consistent. He seems to be focused on doing the same thing, functioning in the same way. We're 16 pages in and we've already gone through a lot. But he's saying the same thing as he started with. He started by saying, oh, Meno, you're ignorant. And here is your family, here is your partner, here is the society you grew up in, here is your teacher. And Meno doesn't think he's ignorant, so he's going to ignore all those important clues that Meno could be using to discovering the nature of his ignorance. So Socrates started by that. Let's go back, let's see it for ourselves. So Meno said, hey, can you teach virtue? Socrates said, oh, here's your city and your people and what you think wisdom is and who the sort of person that you are dating, you'd be attracted to, and his culture and your teacher and the style of answering questions that you think is attached to wisdom. By the way, I don't do that. I don't think wisdom is that. I don't give you answers in a confident style. And we've seen that since. Since then, he said, look, for your benefit and for mine, I'm not going to give you answers. Doesn't matter how much of a tyrant you are, as you demand it. You rich, pretty boy. Even a blindfolded person could tell that you are good looking, because only good looking people can get away with these sorts of demands, which is funny. Socrates is funny. So, nevertheless, I don't know what it is, but let's search what in the world is self-excellence. So, same idea. This is what I can see of your problem, and here are some clues that you can use to solve the problem. I'm not going to solve the problem for you. Here are some clues you can use to solve your own problem. Now that we've addressed that, let's get into the logos. We can do midwifery later. Let's get into the logos now. So what's the logos? Hey, I don't know what it is. Different state of mind to start the quest. But let's find it. Not only let's find what virtue is, but let's find what it is in being and the oneself. Not in the physical, in the realm of being, and in potentially the realm above being. In fact, that's one of the games that we play. In philosophy, we can, let's put it on the board. We can look at the way that we can jump from the realm of becoming. This is the physical world, the physical realm of sense perception. We are interested as philosophers and human beings on the quest, the only game in town, the noblest game, to reach the realm of being. That's where truth lies. That's where we get understanding. That's what we need to keep our eye focused on if we want to solve our problems as individuals and as a species, because this is the realm of opinions, and opinions have nothing to do with truth. Just ask my crazy Aunt Betty what her opinions are of this or that, and she will give you a lot of opinions, and she will very much enjoy giving you advice, even though she's batshit crazy. Her opinions don't have to reach truth. Nothing to do with truth, but the world of being, which we can call the realm of reality or mind. That's what we need to get to reach the realm of understanding. But in this game that we're playing, we can use the what we discover from how we reach this realm of being, or how we go from Meno's level of being to Socrates' level of being. We can use that to ask the question or develop clues for ourselves, as we're saying, solve the puzzle ourselves, to how we reach the self, the one self. You could call it the good self, and maybe there's even a third name for it that you can discover in the Republic. The ultimate. So who is this going to be? Could this be us? So we can take what we're getting from how the difference between Meno and Socrates, or what we would need to do to make that jump from being someone in their Meno moments, we all have Meno moments, to somebody who, how do we make the Socrates switch, as we've been saying? And use that. Now what do we do after we make that jump? We reflect on that process to learn about the process itself. So we go make this jump, then we reflect on that jump from here and use that reflection to make this jump. Those are the three levels of self. So Socrates started by saying, hey, you think you know, but you are in this realm. Here are some clues. Here are some clues about why you have these false beliefs about what virtue is. But me, I don't know. I'm in aporia. And let's seek. So I don't know, but let's seek it together. So what does he say? He says, this one. I don't know. Call that aporia. Puzzled, stung. Number one. Number two. Let's let's seek it together, and not just seeking virtue, but seeking self-virtue in self. So what are we doing? We are not acting like we are certain, acting like our dumb opinions are right. That's called being ignorant in a negative sense. There's a kind of good ignorance if you say that, well, this acknowledgement that you're stung is a kind of acknowledgement that you're ignorant in a good way. So you don't know, but let's seek it together. And we're not just seeking what's the right opinion, whose opinions are right, like a debate. We're seeking it in self. These are the three aspects to what Socrates responded to straight away. Let's seek it in self, which can apply to being, because self is the honorific, self-justice, self-beauty. These are the things that we need to seek if we're on the human quest. These are what we keep our eye focused on while doing the dialectic. This is one of the things we've already got from the text. So what we come to learn in the text, that virtue is keeping your eye on real being when you ask questions and judge answers or do the dialectic. So virtue is keeping your eye on being while doing the dialectic. We learn that in the next few pages when Socrates gives us a demonstration of that dialectic. But even before outlining it, he's doing it already. He's saying, hey, let's seek it in being together. So you could say there are four aspects. And if there are four aspects, we're happy because we're looking for fours. We're looking for sets of fours because there are four aspects to the dialectic. Whoops. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're keeping our eye on being while seeking, using the model of seeking the dialectic. This is the thing that Meno is unfamiliar with and very confused about. Okay, so you could say, well, let's seek it following the logos. Okay, so we start with the state of mind of being open and stung and curious. That's his starting point. Hey, I don't know what virtue is, unlike what you are claiming, Meno, says Socrates. Let's seek it together. Sorry, let's seek it, which is the logos. And the third thing that he says is together. What are we seeing by together? His level of mastery of this art of following the logos, which is what we're all here for, we're learning time and time again, is something he can share with something, he can pass on, he can use it to benefit others. So we can wonder, hey, if he's using his mastery of the logos, which is the quest we're all here on this planet for, if he's using it to benefit someone, is that art? Is that an art? Using some sort of skill and knowledge to benefit the subject? Is that needed to keep the tradition alive? If Socrates didn't do this and he just kept to himself, where would we be today? We'd be screwed as a society, as a species. Literally, we are following the line of the anti-logos or pathologos as a species. Something that Socrates predicted. Says, hey, if you guys don't do this, this is what's going to happen. You're going to have all these people who are claiming to be philosophers, but they're going to use heuristicon logon, debate language, and they are going to be lovers of contention, fighting, lovers of drama and yelling at each other. Debate, again, another aspect of the debate bro culture of what it means to be a knower in today's culture. And they are going to be anti-logos, so heuristic logon, using language just to, I don't know, bullshit. Lovers of fighting, philonikos, and not lovers of learning, philomathesis, or lovers of wisdom, philosophy, and they're going to be anti-logos. This is what happens if you don't pick up what I'm laying down, said Socrates 2,500 years ago. Now, absolutely true. To this day, it's true. Our job is to reawaken philosophy, which is the name of the channel. Which we're really happy about when that happens. Reawaken philosophy because it's exactly what we need as the antidote for where we are as individuals, stuck in our suffering and ignorance, here to learn what we're here to learn, and also as a species. We are playing out the dialectic of what's false. What happens if we don't have the logos and we are a slave to a dialectic, a relationship with the anti-logos or the pathologos? And we're at a level of development within our species where that can play out to the extinction of our planet and our species. So this might be considered a esoteric or secret teaching or a mystical teaching, because very few people have the courage and integrity to go on this quest. Most people are a slave to their loyalty to their dearly beloved beliefs and their ignorance. But today we don't have that luxury. We don't have the luxury to keep it a secret. So we talk about it all the time to as many people as we can. And that's why we have this channel. So, following the logos, what would happen for us if he didn't share it together with somebody else? We would be screwed. We would not have what we need to correct our species and discover what we are here to discover as individuals. For anybody who's interested in the truth, interested in understanding, and interested in reaching their highest, most meaningful goals or destiny. It would be disaster. So thankfully, he's using it, which takes us back to the maxim, what are we here for? To know the self and show the self. So that's together. And how does he involve his friend Meno with this beneficial art, perhaps? The dialectic. The dialectic. He doesn't just use the dialectic in structuring his own thoughts and communicating his own, well, he also uses it to communicate those thoughts to Meno, and he uses it to, within the conversation itself, dialectic. Fascinating. So thank goodness he did. And of course, the fourth part is, I don't know what it is. Let's seek it following the logos, together with the dialectic in self. So I'm not just interested in an opinion about virtue, which is modern philosophy, which is not philosophy. Of course, it's philodoxia, love of opinions. So these debate bros and these philosophy apparent, whatever, people who call themselves philosophers, they do not seek it in self, they seek an opinion that they like. Whose opinion? The Bible's opinion, the Koran's opinion, Hegel's opinion, Kant's opinion, this interpreter of Plato's opinion. Garbage, doesn't help anything, doesn't actually fix anything, doesn't move us forward, just keeps us in contention, Nikos. Again, so it's against the logos, because the logos is about being, self-being, and the self. So these people claiming to be philosophers are shutting down the logos. They like to debate, Nikos, and they use language to do so. To be contentious to get clicks, or to be contentious to win arguments. Heuristicon logon, heuristic logos. So we're not doing the that. We are seeking the ideal. So the self has three meanings. It can mean itself, a physical thing that you're pointing to. It can mean the ideal in being, which is the honorific, is the fancy word. The ideal, self-justice. In either being or oneself, the ultimate goal that we are here to seek. Through understanding. We're not just here to seek a one-off glimpse, or some people might call it nirvana, to see the emptiness. Well, hang on a second, is it really empty? Maybe if you reached it through the logos, through the dialectic, once you reach the oneself, you won't say it's emptiness, you'll be able to recognize things about it. Because you've been developing understanding. Just like if you open if you've never seen a car before and somebody opens the hood of a car, you go, woof, what a crazy mess. That is completely unknowable. Of course it's not unknowable. You're just not familiar. You haven't learnt the language of engineering or mechanics. And you haven't even used it together with someone, another mechanic, to talk about it, to develop your understanding, or maybe use it together to help an apprentice develop his understanding of a car engine, or maybe use it together with a regular person who wants their car fixed. All of these apply to the misunderstanding of the experience of the oneself, or not an experience, the recognition of the oneself that some people call emptiness or nirvana. But don't tell people that. Ask them the question so they can recognize that for themselves. All right, so this is Socrates' response right at the beginning. I don't know. Now, if we see 4, this goes into your skill tree. Put it into your skill tree. Have your notepad, flip over to that section, because this is a 4. Now, if you notice a 4, you're in a special kind of skill tree, because there are 4 categories of the dialectic. And the exercise of philosophy is starting with an openness and curiosity, following the logos, and organizing it through the dialectic to reach being in the oneself. Literally, this simple way of being that Socrates is giving us in just a few sentences fantastically, brilliantly summarizes the nature of philosophy and spirituality. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that cool? I think it's cool.
Wow. Wow. What? Wow.
I think it's cool. So, if part of that structure is pulling out these key terms, which we've just done, here's 4 key terms, then we need to structure it with the dialectic. So if you have a 4, you found a set of 4 on this skill tree, 4s, then, so we can put it here, you can realize, oh, hang on a second, here's another branch of 4s, the dialectic. You can take this stick from this branch of the skill tree and rub it up against this stick to create a spark. Rubbing sticks together in the skill trees. So how do we do that? If there are 4, can you find a way of understanding these 4 categories within the structure of the dialectic? And if you try, what do you see? By rubbing it together, do you realize something? Have you gained a new insight about one of them by applying these to it? Or maybe have you recognized, hang on a second, there's something about one of them that's missing a part that I only would have found once I've rubbed it against the dialectic. That's for you to do. How do you do it? Which is the definition? Which is most accurately expresses its functioning? Which most accurately expresses how it can be divided up into many different kinds of functioning? And which most accurately exemplifies the conclusion or the synthesis and analysis? Or maybe causes, which is more the cause of the others? Can you see a causal chain in one direction? Or maybe rearranging some of these parts? It's a puzzle that you can take. Why? Because it would not benefit you nor me for me to just give you the answers, says Socrates. Now, that's fantastic. He's doing this right at the beginning. And then he gives a couple of dialectics on what virtue is, and then he gives a division or gives many different examples of the model of the dialectics used in other ways, because again, this is the structure, this is the model, this is the method for understanding and for philosophy. So you better help me figure out this pattern. And then he concludes, by the way, this pattern we can call the paradigm. This is the paradigm, and I want you to use this paradigm to give an answer, because you're not giving me an answer about what virtue is. You're just pointing to physical examples in the physical world and opinions about the physical world that you happen to agree with already. And it's stupid and wrong. You've already seen that they don't make sense. So instead of doing that, which is, by the way, what everybody does nowadays until we learn the logos, instead of doing that, use the paradigm. And then he doesn't use the paradigm, so we could say this is the next section. This is Meno having a go. And he doesn't use the paradigm. He just quotes a religious figure or a poet that he likes, which is very commonly done nowadays, by the way. So it might be time to wake up and listen to Socrates. And then Socrates doesn't just block that, he uses that, and when you say it's to get beautiful things, to desire beautiful things and be able to get them, do you mean beautiful things or good things? Oh, I actually mean good. Okay. By the way, to get them, does that mean it becomes to be yourself? Of course. That's what I mean, to get them, to make them yourself. And by the way, does everybody desire good things? Because what happens if you make them yourself? If you make a bad thing part of yourself, doesn't that hurt you? Like you eat a bad sandwich, doesn't that make you sick? Yeah. And if you are, we call that harmed, don't we? Yeah. You're harmed by eating a poisonous sandwich, a bad sandwich. And by the way, if you're harmed, won't that make you miserable? So your state of mind will be crap, and your functioning will be crap. You will be mean-spirited or a kakademon. Yeah, But who wants to be miserable and mean-spirited or a kakadama? Nobody. So does anybody really desire bad things? No. Oh, so you can't say this is virtue. Virtue is seeking good things if everyone seeks good things. The problem is belief. Some people, through the level of thinking of belief, which again is this realm down here, we can say this physical realm is the realm of what color? Let's use this one. That's the cognitive function, like the way of using your mind, the cognitive function of opinions and beliefs. Down the bottom. So, people who are led to believe versus recognition or understanding. So let's see it in the text. Here we go. Led to believe versus recognition. So we can add this. So we can say what level is recognition? Is it this one or this one? Or both? But recognition is what we're after. See it for ourselves. So if you think that there are two parts to virtue, to wish for good things and to be able to get them, then the wishing for or the desiring for good things belongs to all of us. So you can't say one person is better than another or more virtuous. It must be, people must be better according to their ability to get stuff. So we can say our new definition of what is virtue, the power of being able to get good things. By the way, what level of thinking are you at? What level of good? Are you at good in the physical world? Gold and silver and fame and good jobs and offices and stuff? Do you want goodness itself? Do you want apprehension of truth and the aspects of truth? Or do you want the one self or the good self? What level of thinking are you on? And Meno says, gold and silver. Garbage. We say that's garbage. Garbage. Whoops. And then Socrates says, by the way, not just gold and silver, right? And he says, yes, just gold and silver. And then he has a joke. He says, no wonder you're family friends with the king of Persia, known for being very rich. So it's no wonder you have this dumb opinion. And of course we can see that, like, people who grow up in a rich family, they think it's good to be rich. People who grow up, in a political family, they think fame and honors and offices are the best thing. People who grow up in a religious family, they think having religious beliefs is the good thing, best thing. It's very easy to see the connection between the personal opinions and beliefs that you get from childhood and how you get them from your family and culture. Not hard to see, especially if we're reading the philosophical midwifery textbook, which we're doing on this channel. So, by the way, so if virtue comes down to, if we all desire the good things, it's just a matter of if we have been grifted to or conned because people have told us beliefs are good. Belief in God, belief in the Bible, belief in the Quran, belief in the Vedic scriptures, belief in this president, belief in your teacher, belief in whatever. Bollocks. That's where you can get conned. People who say state level of belief are grifters. People who develop their own understanding and seeing and recognition for themselves can step out of that and recognize that those bad things are actually bad and they won't desire them. So given that, it's very hard to have enemies. Because Meno said his first definition of virtue is to harm your enemies. Right at the beginning. First of all, it's very easy to tell you what virtue is. It's do good to your friends and harming your enemies. Very hard to have enemies if you recognize that all people are the same, in that they seek good. The problem is whether or not they have been lied to through beliefs, and they have been convinced that the bad is actually good, and so they desire the bad thing, thinking they're good. The remedy would not be doing harm to them, Meno. Justice system, war system, economic system, all of the institutions and people in those offices of them today, just as it was back then. That's stupid. You don't harm them, you provide the conditions for them to go from false beliefs to recognition, which might involve understanding and maybe even beyond understanding. So people are better, not because they desire that, but their ability to get those good things. By the way, if you do get those good things, like gold and silver, in a bad way, is that virtue? Of course not. Oh, so not having the good things is also virtue. Yeah. If your way of getting them is through injustice. Oh. So what are we left with? So if the way of getting is no more as aporia, being at a loss, which again applies to not just gold and silver, but that state of mind that Socrates is in, that he started with, I'm at a loss. I don't know what virtue is. And Socrates mocked him. I don't care if you mock me or not. I still don't know. And by the way, I've never met anyone who knows. So it goes on many levels, of course. For Meno, he's level of the physical world, so he just thinks being poor. That's no more or less virtue. So what are we left with? Well, if the only difference is being able to get it, and even that doesn't make you virtue, this is virtue. This is his conclusion. Let's make it pink. To do whatever one does with a part of virtue. Because whatever we do, whatever we're seeking, we think is good. And if doing it justly is necessary, then justice is a part of virtue. Because this justice is one of the real beings. It's a part of virtue. So what's virtue? Doing anything with a part of virtue. That is crazy. You're crazy. You're kidding me. By the way, if they are parts of virtue and we want the whole of virtue, what does that mean? And by the way, those parts are the beings, aspects of being. If they are, if these parts are the aspects of beings, parts of virtue, how can you know the whole of virtue without knowing the self, which is this level above? That's a big puzzle that we've been carrying since we read that part. So, that's where we are. And after all of that, what does Socrates say? Well, first of all, Meno has his little counterattack, has his little tizzy, which again is normal and natural. And if you've ever had a conversation with someone, as soon as they reach the point where they can no longer be the knower and the ones giving you advice, they can get really upset when they can't play that role, because everyone wants to be the guru, but most people are addicted to cosplaying the guru, which is why, hey, let me give you some advice. It's terrible to be on the receiving end, to be talked at in that way. But as soon as they realize that they're ignorant, they might get pissy and get angry and start throwing fists or throwing insults. And that's what Meno does. He doesn't throw fists, but he says if you get out of Athens, they will throw fists at you. And you are bad, and you are ugly, and you are a flathead, and you look like a flathead, and you function like a flat-headed stingray because I'm stung. Because I still believe I know about virtue, but I can't talk now. Because of your magical charms, your philosophy, and your logos and reasoning. You have used your charms, you are a sorcerer. Burn him, says Meno. Says your friend when you reason with them to the level where they realize that they're ignorant. Now, what do we do when that happens? What does Socrates do? Makes fun of it, doesn't take it personally. Say, oh yeah, maybe I am like a stingray, so long as the stingray is even more stung himself. So if you are stung, then it's because I am self-stung. I am stung at the level of self. Again, what level is he talking about? Is he stung and puzzled at this level here? The honorific self or the one self? Don't know. Could be both. Meno is physically stung. He's using physical analogies. Still, Meno is down here. Poor Meno. So he makes a joke, and then what does he do? He says, hey, I am self-stung, number one. Nevertheless, let's consider, follow the logos, and along with you, dialectic, to find what it is in being. The same four aspects. Still, I am even more stung. Let's follow these things and consider them together and find what it is in being. So these four aspects of his way of functioning hasn't changed even after all of that, even after all the insults, even after giving the paradigm, even after giving a couple of dialectics, even after letting Meno have a go and trying to correct him. Still functioning in the same way. What does that mean? Is that part of virtue? This consistency or sameness or single-minded focus on these four qualities, is this virtue? Is this part of virtue? How does it relate to the dialectic? That's the question we've just talked about. Exciting stuff. So what does Meno say about searching? How can we even do that? How can we search together in this not knowing state you're talking about? Because if you don't know, then how do you know that you've gotten it? And if you already know, there's no point in searching it at all. So in what way do you search for this, Socrates? If you search for what you do not know, what kind will you assume it is? If you don't know what it is, what will you assume it is so you can look for it? If you don't know what an elephant, if you don't know an elephant is an animal, how do you go on a hunt for an elephant? If you don't know what an elephant is. And if you find this beast, if you don't know what an elephant is, how will you recognize you found it? This is heuristikon logon, contentious words, contentious arguments, debate bro, garbage. Since it claims people should neither search for what they know nor what they don't know. People should be blind, obedient, silent, dumb idiots, which allows them to be manipulated, by the way. I wonder if Gorgias, Meno's teacher, benefits from this way of thinking from Meno. I don't know. For if they should neither search for that which they know because they already know it, and there's no need, or they shouldn't search for what they don't know, because how will they know what they're looking for? Oh no, says Socrates in that exact voice. Is that not a good argument, Socrates? No. Can you explain why? I can indeed. Because I have heard from both wise men and women. By the way, Meno earlier said there's a virtue for men and a different virtue for women. Men can be in society. Women have to stay in the house. What do we call that? Sexist garbage. Garbage. What is Socrates saying? He's already said that the same virtue applies for men and women. Stop being sexist, you dope. He didn't call him a dope, of course. We're summarizing. And by the way, I have met wise women and men. Okay, yes, here we go. Sophon, wise. About, and what makes you wise? Knowing about divine realities. Wisdom isn't like his teacher or what Meno was training to do. Talk about things in the physical world. Same thing in the time of 2024. People who claim to be wise just talk about the beliefs that they like, physical things in the physical world. That's not wise at all, says Socrates. The wise men and women are wise because they know the divine realities, these aspects of reality that are eternal in being. This is what makes you actually wise. So if that Sophon and philosophia is the love of wisdom, philosophy is only about this realm here. Which is amazing because very few philosophers of today, 2024, say this. Most people say, oh, I'm wise because look at how well I can debate opinions. Look at how well I can yell at people and intimidate people and use tricky arguments from Kant and Hegel, how well I can quote the Bible to prove my opinions. And then I get in a debate with somebody else who disagrees. But then I realize that he's a Muslim, so I quote the Quran. Oh, and I win a debate that way. Look how clever I am. Garbage. That's not philosophy. Wisdom is up here. How well, so instead of doing that, how well can you do what Socrates is doing? Being in a state of aporia, following the logos, through a dialectic, together with another person to help them reach being or the oneself. That would make you wise. So everybody go into the comment section of every philosopher you see on YouTube who is like in that level of Meno or non-philosopher or philodoxia, lover of opinions, and make that argument, make that case to them. Hey, do this, like Socrates. And then let me know how it goes. I say that jokingly because, as we see with Meno, it's very hard for most people to change their mind. Meno is say, hey, you're a flathead in your appearance and in your functioning, and you're a sorcerer, and you'd be burned at the stake. So people get very angry to have their personal beloved beliefs and opinions contradicted or challenged, which is a huge issue with humanity. It's the issue. This is the issue of humanity. Socrates said all this 2,500 years ago. It exactly helps us to understand and address the problems we face as individuals and as society today. So that problem is that we don't know the truth, or we don't have access to the truth. The problem is we reject it as human beings. That's the issue. They killed Socrates. You say this to a philosopher in the channel, they'll say, well, this is pseudo-intellectual garbage. Where's your degree from Cambridge? They will reject it, even if this is true and what will help them and help our species. This is a big deal. So, the way in which Socrates brings Meno back from all of his counterattacks and pettiness and bitterness and contention and all that stuff, anti-logos stuff, the way in which Socrates brings Meno back into the fold of the logos and dialectic must be part of virtue. We can't ignore that as human beings. This is a huge issue. This is a big part of the game. So we can take that as a question and carry it with us as we continue to read. Because Meno has said, hey, isn't this a good argument? That you shouldn't seek for anything? Is you either already know it, or if you don't know it, hell, you recognize it and know what to look for. No. By the way, men and women. So, in this one sentence, which is something that philosophers do, he didn't need to say this. He could have just explained in what way that sentence was garbage. But he threw this in. Why? Well, we know that Meno is sexist. We know that Meno hasn't experienced the divine realities and probably doesn't even know about them. He wasn't even taught about them from his crappy teacher Gorgias. So and we know he has a bad view of, here is Sophon, which means wisdom. We know he has look, one of the first things Socrates says is, oh wow, this is literally the first thing he says is, oh Meno, in times past the Thessalians were famous and admired by the Hellenes for their horsemanship and their riches, probably where you are. But now it appears to me that they are famous for their wisdom. This is a joke, because here is the word wisdom. This habit of answering in a fearless and grand style, whether or not you happen to know what's been asked, whether or not it benefits anyone on any subject. That's your idea of wisdom. Very similar to the debate bros and all these people we've been talking about even today. So, literally the first thing he says is, you have a crazy idea of wisdom. And, by the way, women's virtue is different, keeping her household in good order, sexist garbage. So we know that Meno has a problem with sexism and a problem with wisdom. So this thing he threw in here, right after Meno tries to shut down the Logos with this garbage argument, or heuristikon logon, might be specifically important. Maybe one of the reasons why you're stuck is this. You have a bad idea about what wisdom is, so I'm going to help you. This might be part of what we were just saying. How do we bring people in? If you say, hey, by the way, your opinions are wrong, like to a sexist or a fascist or a right-winger or any of these people that you can find, everywhere, they're going to get angry at you. Because they don't like having their sexism challenged. They don't like to be told that they're not actually wise because they have no understanding or experience of being dianoia and nous. I like to pretend I'm smart. That's why I like to make choices over women's rights, says all of these fascists who are taking away women's rights to be in control of their own body. They're not wise. They are the most ignorant because they have this issue. They do not search for that which they know. And they are the most sexist. So, the fact that Socrates brings this in, by the way, women and men can be equally wise. So this is this is an experience I have had of wise women and men. So Meno, you should change your opinions about women, number one. And by the way, they are wise because they know divine realities. You need to change your view of wisdom. Now, here is the thing. Do people change their balloons? Lots of balloons. Do people change their opinions based on experience? Sometimes. Prejudices can be changed with new experiences. You might grow up racist, you leave your town, you experience one of that culture you've been racist against or sexist against, and you go, oh gee, I was wrong, I changed my mind. That's learning. But there are some false beliefs about the world or about wisdom that are not changed with personal experience. That's why we have to do philosophical midwifery. It was not learned through experience and words. They were wordless conclusions based on imitation when we were young in certain situations. If that is the root cause of these false beliefs, we might not be able to change our mind given new experiences or new reasoning. If it's just a false belief or just a simple prejudice, we might be able to. So that's our question. Is Socrates giving new reasoning and experience? I've had this experience that there are wise women and men. And here is some reasoning. Wisdom is about knowing the divine realities. Is that enough to change Meno's mind? We don't know. If it is, fantastic. If it isn't, we can ask the question, why? Could it be He has a pathologos that can't be addressed with experience and reasoning and only can be addressed with midwifery, and therefore our job would be to do a part 2 of the Meno, where we bring in what we're learning from philosophical midwifery and add that to the main character, Socrates, functioning in the text, because he wasn't able to get over the sexist and ignorant idea of wisdom. He wasn't able to step out of it enough to follow the logos and come to an understanding of truth about virtue. If that's the case, then maybe the purpose of the text is for us to play by doing Meno part 2. We don't know, but we can keep that as an option in mind as we read. Does Meno change his mind? Does he drop his sexist beliefs, and does he drop his ignorant beliefs about what it means to be wise? Because, and also, not only do we have that question that we can take with us, but we're learning about Socrates. What a dude he is. He didn't have to add this. He could just say, hey, what way am I wrong about this argument? Let me tell you. No, he threw this in. Oh, I've learned it from wise men and women. And they're wise because they know divine realities. He did it for a reason, always. What reason? Is this to do with benefit? He said back here that this false idea of wisdom is that you answer everything. Right, the very first thing he said. You answer everything, whether or not they happen to know what they're asking, or whether it benefits them. So if that's false, what does that tell us about what's true? Is Socrates not just answering the questions directly, but answering the real questions that they don't even know is behind what they're asking? In other words, when Meno is asking about this, what's wrong with my problem? The real question is, what's blocking me? My sexist and ignorant beliefs about wisdom? So, is part of wisdom answering the real question? And is part of wisdom benefiting? Make sure you answer it in a way that would specifically benefit him. So like a doctor has to prescribe specific treatment, specific medicine. Hey, and if the patient's an alcoholic, he won't prescribe certain medicine because it might mix badly with the alcohol. He has to tailor his prescription and his remedy to the person. So too, would that mean Socrates is tailoring the way he's responding? He's not answering it directly. He's tailoring it specifically to address the specific illnesses and needs of his patient. If so, is that art? And if so, is that virtue? These are questions that we are pulling out from the text by reading it in this wonderful way with a lot of aporia. So, what logos do they speak about? Ooh! Is Meno cracking open his ignorance a little bit? Really? Wise women? And they're wise about divine realities? What do they say? Is he getting his foot in the door a little bit? Opening the crack? Will that benefit him a little bit? He's curious. Interesting. Is this a kind of curiosity? Maybe it's not true aporia, but maybe it's a start. If Socrates has said, hey, look, you resemble one who doesn't know. I don't believe you. I don't think you've got aporia. But then I'm going to give you this question that not only tackles your ignorance, but makes you a little bit curious, which might be a new experience to you. Would that benefit him? Especially if Socrates says, by the way, I'm self-aporia, and aporia is self-virtue. Or maybe an aspect of it, don't know yet. Ooh, Socrates is really functioning on a super high level. This is so exciting about philosophy. On a personal note, this is amazing to see Socrates functioning at this level. And if you're lucky enough to come across someone like Socrates, it's mind-blowing that they're operating on all of these levels at once. Masterful levels to benefit people. But it's one of those things where it's like, oh gee, I wish everyone knew about this. It's like, imagine you live in a world where you meet Michael Jordan, but you're the only one in the world who knows anything about basketball. Oh, this exciting, cool thing. But how can I explain how cool it is to people? if they're completely unfamiliar with the logos, with benefit, with the pathologos, with logos and anti-logos or heuristicon logos, the problems of ignorance, the problems we face as a species, the problems with spirituality, if they're unfamiliar with any of that, how can they appreciate how awesome Socrates is at functioning within all those puzzles in a way that most benefits? That's mind-blowingly awesome. And this is the excitement that you can see in philosophy that I enjoy, and it is open to be seen provided you learn to read in this way, number one, provided you're in the Balboa text, which has the key terms and the structure, which gives us what we need to do. Gives us the key terms. The key words like beings and self are in the translation that haven't been before. Gives us the structure, we need to structure it. The word aporia hasn't been in any other texts. It's key. All of these key words are literally self, eidos, being, oneself, aporia, logos, even dialectic most times. They're not in any other translation except for the Balboa. What's the significance of that? If our job is to pull out the key terms and structure it according to the dialectic, what will be the significance if we don't have those key terms? And secondly, what would be the significance if most colleges don't even read the text itself, but read somebody else's interpretation of the text? So you don't even get not only the words, don't even have the structure. Not only that, you have the particular interpreter's false opinions, Meno problems, pathologos, that you don't even know, hey, how much of this is the translator's ignorance? How much of this is the translator's pathologos? How much of this is the translator's problem? And how much of this is what actually Socrates is saying? You have no idea. Which is one of the fundamental reasons why the way they teach philosophy currently is garbage. We're going to read this synopsis of Nietzsche. How much is Nietzsche? How much is the translator? How much is the translator's problem and misinterpretation, and how much is actually what Nietzsche said? And of those things, how much is Nietzsche's problem, and how much of that is Nietzsche's level of development of the logos and level of vision of reality? None of these questions are asked, but all of them must be asked if you're reading anything. So it's not philosophy. I don't know what it is. It's garbage, and it's a waste of time at best. It usually kills or crushes the spirit of young college students who are interested in knowing reality, interested in knowing relationships, interested in figuring out their ideal. That's killed by these jerks, ignorant jerks like Gorgias, who charge a lot of money for this miseducation. But that's what, and by the way, if you're in that group and you had to pay all that money, I'm sorry, but it's okay. And if you're one of the people within the cogs of that machine, don't take it personal. Just be better. Don't react in a negative way like Meno. Be open and curious to becoming better. Model the maturity that you would have to be claiming you have if you are going to get angry about this. So how dare you say I'm immature? Well, be mature. Take this, understand it, and be better. Can Meno, and one of the questions is, how well can Meno do that? If Meno is finding his sexist views are wrong, his view of wisdom is wrong, how well can he be mature, reflect, become rational, and be better? Or how well is he stuck? Same thing. Exactly the same. The same problem we're facing as a species. How do we introduce the truth, considering human beings rebel against anything different from their pathologos beliefs or even their prejudices? That's the issue. Not that we don't have the truth, we have the Balboa text, it's there. How do we receive it, considering we fight against what can make us better? If that's the human problem, at least at this time of history, how can we see it being played out between Socrates and Meno? And how can we gain insights from this relationship to become better ourselves? How do we learn from this to become better? How can we have more success than Socrates had? Or if Socrates had the ideal success, how can we model it ourselves? These are all questions that we can take with us. Now, what are we doing? That is all we don't have it on the board. That's Aphrodite. So let's make another triad just to... This way in which we're reflecting on what we're reading in philosophy, relating it to ourselves and our world, that's Aphrodite. We have this on the board somewhere else, but we had to start a new board because it was getting rather full. Apollo is the representation of reading philosophy. Aphrodite is what we're just doing now, making it personally meaningful and therefore inspiring when we seeing that the parts come together into meaningful wholes. We have to apply ourselves to it. We have to reflect in this way. What's most significant to us? What's most significant to our species? And the two of them come together for this triad. And it's a triad, so it can go into a skill tree of threes. Hermes. Oops. Hermes, which is the highest ideal or the hyparxis or the fullest flowering. So we can put those words in there. Highest ideal, hyparxis or fullest flowering. This thing here. And what's the fullest flowering of philosophy and connections together, seeing the parts come together into wholes, reading and personal meaningfulness, inspiration and the text. What do they come together to reach as its fullest flowering, as its highest ideal of philosophy? Hermes, which represents the dialectic. So that's what we're doing right now in this revision and this summary, and applying it to what's most relevant to us, to conversations, to people, to our species. We're doing the Aphrodite, which we have to do. So we spend as much time reading in this way as we reflect on the reading, the significance of the reading, the effect of the reading on our lives, on the world, on our species, on how we talk to our friends over coffee. Oh, you said coffee, so I'm drinking some coffee. You have to be doing both. They're not machines, and philosophy is not a dry, dead, boring thing like it's done in colleges. You have to be doing both, otherwise it is dumb and stupid and boring and dull. And if you have both, Aphrodite and Apollo, you can reach the dialectic. So, taking that insight back with us, Socrates is not just using Apollo to, hey, give me the words of why this is a bad argument. Before I do that, I'm going to make it personally significant. I'm going to bring in this stuff about sexism. I'm going to bring in this new understanding of wisdom. I'm going to make it personally meaningful to you. By the way, these are things we mentioned right at the beginning. The first thing I said is you have a poor view of wisdom. The first thing you said is that you're sexist. So these are the parts that bring it together into a whole in a personally meaningful way. And if Meno was actually aporia, open and curious and wondering and on this hunt in the best kind of way, he might have a more inspired experience right now. Wow, it's all coming together, Socrates. Really? Wise men and women? And wisdom is about the divine realities? This conversation isn't just belittling me or telling me I'm wrong, which I'm not used to and I don't like hearing, flathead. It's the universe, or you, or the logos through you, or both, is unfolding meaningful words in a meaningful structure that has a personal meaning to me, and those parts come together in a fantastic, beneficial whole. Holy crap, this isn't something bad. This isn't like any school I've been in, any college I've been in, where they treat you like stupid robots, regurgitate the same dumb opinions on a test, will give you an A, and then will kick you out into the workforce, while we continue to exploit you through student debt and exploit you through capitalism. Garbage, 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 garbage. It's not that. It's inspiring. It connects. So long as you're reading in this way, so long as you're in aporia, open, curious, and stung, and so long as you're seeking the highest ideal in the self. Aphrodite. So here's a little bit of Aphrodite before what's the logos? Before the Apollo. Aphrodite and Apollo. You need both. So one of our questions that we've just been talking about today is, if the problem with humanity isn't that we don't have what we need to find truth, we have the Balboa translation of Socrates, our problem is, why are we not open to it? Why are we more addicted to loyalty to our ignorance and false beliefs and our appearances than we are to being open and curious, aporia, to learning something new? And is Socrates demonstrating what we need to do to overcome this problem as individuals, because we need to change our mind. As friends, we want to help our friends change their mind for the benefit, for the good and their benefit. And as a species, we want to help our planet and our species survive, and not just survive, but flourish. Big question, big implications, big Aphrodite stuff there for us. And part of Socrates' maybe answer to us could be, throw in some Aphrodite before you hit Apollo. Make some, pull out the logos that connects back to the beginning, connects back to what's significant for Meno, his sexism and his ignorance of wisdom. And then hit him with some Apollo. Aphrodite and Apollo are the two things that lead to dialectic. The thing we need to learn as a species and as individuals to overcome our problems and reach our own fullest flowering or hypaxis. That's what we need. How do we do it? That's what we're learning. So, a little bit of Aphrodite to wet your whistle, and then what does Meno say? Oh, interesting. My whistle has been sufficiently wetted. Wetted? Now give me some logos. Give me some Apollo. What logos did they speak? Oh, truth, Apollo, and beauty, Aphrodite. Wow.
Wow.
So this is one of the things about the logos. That reflection, us doing Aphrodite, came to some interesting conclusions and puzzles and questions and hypotheses. And then the very next thing we read is two key terms. The key terms that you could only see in the Balboa. That's why the logos can be reflected to us so long as we're in the right text. The truth, the right text because it's accurate. We see the Greek there. The truth and the beauty, Apollo and Aphrodite. So, what does that mean? Okay, what do wise men and women say? They use two things, says Socrates. They use truth and beauty, what we might call Apollo and Aphrodite. What was our question? How do we overcome the ignorance of humanity to benefit them in a way that's necessary? Well, we better be acting in a wise way, which is what? Using truth, Apollo, and beauty, Aphrodite. Reading this text, reflecting on it in a way that makes it personally meaningful, significant, so that we can see how these parts come together in a whole that's beautiful, inspiring, and personally significant for all of us. Beauty, the goddess of beauty, is Aphrodite. Apollo is philosophy, which is truth. Wow. What is this, and who were the speakers? Wow, okay, so now that we have all that background, the significance of what follows is going to be far more significant to us. Because we did Aphrodite, because we're in the text Apollo and reading the right way Apollo, and because we did this kind of reflection that we did today, we reflected on the whole text, and what's most significant as individuals, and what's most significant as a species, and why it's most significant, and what's most significant when we try and benefit our friends and talk in a way that's not a debate bro, euristicon logon, or anti-logos, or lovers of opinion, philodoxia, but the better way of treating our friends, the better way of treating ourselves, the better way of treating each other as a species. These are all the Aphrodite questions that we've brought up, and one of the hypotheses is Aphrodite and Apollo. The use of the logos and the dialectic in an artful way, in an open, curious, aporia state of mind. So we're almost channeling the logos, but in a way that will most specifically benefit the person we're talking to. And it'll bring everything together, make it meaningful. We're not just lecturing him, we're not putting him down, we're not owning him in a debate. Garbage philosophers, non-philosophers. That's what they would say. So what they'd put on their YouTube videos. We're not debate broing them, we're benefiting them by this, Aphrodite, and then Apollo. And then, how do these wise men, how did they speak to Socrates? Truth and beauty, Apollo and Aphrodite. A confirmation of our insight, that's fantastic. So given all that, we are super curious about who they were and what they said. We would not have been that curious if we didn't see the stakes of it, the implications of it, the significance of it, the Aphrodite of it. And we wouldn't have seen that if we weren't in the text Apollo and we weren't reviewing and reflecting in the kind of way that we are doing. All the while on the hunt for the dialectic, Hermes. But considering we are doing that, we are really curious and really interested in a similar way maybe to Meno, really curious and interested about who these people were and what did they say and how did they specifically use Apollo and Aphrodite to change Socrates' mind, to help him learn that which we are as human beings going to be objecting to and even repelling against. How did they use truth and beauty? We're super curious, full of aporia, I hope. And on that cliffhanger, let's jump into that next time. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you've had a lot of fun. Again, YouTube, Twitch, subscribe, and get notifications. Join the Discord if you like. You get a notification when we go live, so you can join the reading in person, in real time. And I hope you are puzzled as I am. No, I hope you're as puzzled as Socrates is. I hope you're a big, fat, flat-headed stingray. And I hope to see you next time. Bye.